Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Maddie, and good morning, everybody. We're honored to have you spending this rainy Tuesday with us. Our Director of Talent Acquisition, Ahmed Mohammed, will welcome us and kick off our info session this morning.
Thank you, Alicia, and good morning, everyone. I'm really happy to meet everyone today and happy to have you join us. My name is Ahmed Mohammed, and I am the Director of Talent Acquisition here at Harvard Medical School. Before I get into a little bit of my initial welcome, I would love to take, even if it's a quick moment, for those who are able to turn on the video just briefly so that I can see the beautiful faces out there. Because I think it's I know Gabby did mention if you don't want yourself recorded, you don't have to, but if you can, even for a brief moment so that we can meet. I know this is a virtual environment. If we can meet face to face, it will be nice. But if you don't have to stay on camera the entire time. So you can turn it back off if you want, but I would love for everybody else to also at least try to have a sense of who folks are. As the Director of Talent Acquisition, one of my roles is to manage recruitment efforts for Harvard Medical School. We have over 62 departments, and when I say Harvard Medical School, I'm specifically talking about staff and non-academic roles within the Harvard Medical School. Now, along with me are amazing individuals who also support this work in many different capacities. We've got Alicia here, we've got Liz, we've got Caitlin, we've got Sabrina as part of the Harvard Medical School and the VEAS team. The important thing about this introduction I wanted to be a part of is also to hopefully, let people know that I myself as an immigrant, coming here in 1999, had a lot of the similar challenges that people will have as they search for their next opportunity in the new space. And it's really important to pay attention to a number of different things. There are a lot of different key points that I think can be discussed. This particular session is focused on, looking for jobs at Harvard and some of the ways that we do our things. But I wanted people to also really pay attention to a few things. Number one, some of the things that I found helpful in my journey from where I started in 1999 when I came here as a student and eventually got into the workforce are things like mentoring, finding the right type of mentors, making sure that I identify the resources that are available to me, networking intentionally. There are all kinds of networking, but intentionally networking is a key aspect of aligning your path to success here in the U.S. Sharpening my communication skills was also one of the very key things that I needed to work on as I also pursued my path. Another key piece is embracing the entry point. And this is a very important piece here. Many of us, sometimes we were doing something else, maybe that was greater than what we are looking at here today. Don't look at that as a step back. It's an entry point, but stay focused on where you want to go in the future. That was a very important thing, and that helped me a lot as I took opportunities that maybe weren't necessarily immediately aligned with where my ultimate career goal was, but I was able to stay focused. And through networking and through managing my career, I was able to carve a path for me here today. And also very important, knowing how to tell your story. All of you have beautiful stories to tell about your paths to being here today, all the experiences, everything that you'll be able to pull together, and the value that you're able to offer any employer here in the United States. So don't forget that you bring a lot that organizations can take advantage of and are actually looking to bring into their organization. So with that, I would like to welcome you here today and pass it back over to Alicia. Thank you for joining us. Alicia?
Thank you, Ahmed, and good morning again. My role at Harvard Medical School is HR Recruitment Coordinator. I work with human resources and the talent acquisition here, Ahmed, Caitlin, Liz at the VEAS, and I'll work with the full recruitment process from posting jobs to helping hiring people and onboarding people into their new roles. I also work with a talent community, which we'll invite you to join later to become connected with us and can be a great resource and connection point between you and Harvard. We wanted to first share our missions as well. Here at Harvard Medical School, our mission is to nurture a diverse, inclusive community dedicated to alleviating suffering and improving health and well-being for all through excellence in teaching and learning, discovery and scholarship, and service and leadership. We're an inclusive environment welcoming all. And now I'll turn it over to our colleague at the Weiss Institute, another branch of Harvard University, Liz Chalmers.
Thanks, Alicia, and good morning, everybody. So I'm Liz Chalmers. I'm an HR business partner at the Weiss Institute. And so the Weiss is a translational research institute that is affiliated with Harvard Medical School, but we have our own kind of operations and mission. So, as I mentioned, we're a translational research institute. So our mission is to make a short-term impact in healthcare and the environment by developing innovative technologies that emulate the way that nature builds and help accelerate the translation of these technologies into commercial products available for use in the clinic with consumers. And we do this through the formation of startups and corporate partnerships to, really create this near-term impact in the world. So we're very much aligned with HMS. We work really closely together, and we're really excited to meet all of you today. Awesome. So when people think about working in higher education, a lot of the time they think about like professorships, postdoctoral research roles, but higher ed really encompasses a wide variety of functional areas. We at HMS and the Weiss are often recruiting across multiple different areas at any given time. So some of the areas that we do recruit for are listed here on this slide. I'll call out just a couple of these. So we do a lot of hiring within administration and operations. We also do a ton of hiring in research administration. So if we have any research administration folks here on this call or any fellows, that's definitely a really big area of need for us. And we're always looking to add folks to our research administration teams. And obviously we do also have research roles available within the basic sciences. And this includes both lab roles where you're at the bench and non-lab research. So we have folks that are working on public health projects, things like that. So there's really a wide variety of opportunities available within higher ed and within HMS and the Weiss. And these non-academic jobs that we recruit for and that we work in ourselves are all really important for supporting the university's operations and research. Even if you're not working directly with students or in the labs, we all contribute to making the organization work and helping to move things along. So I want to talk a little bit about starting your job search and how to navigate the application process and to understand job requirements before you apply for a role. So the first thing that I really recommend when you are ready to start your job search is to use a wide variety of platforms to look for available roles. So some really good places to look are individual organizations' career sites. So we've linked to our Harvard career site here. You can also look at platforms like LinkedIn and Indeed. A lot of organizations do post really widely. So it's really important to kind of diversify where you're looking for roles. Like I said, we've linked to our Harvard career site here, and we'll make sure everyone has a copy of these slides after this presentation. Some of you may have heard Harvard is currently in a hiring pause, but I do just want to note for folks, we are still recruiting for a number of roles that are critical to our operations. So definitely, if you are interested in Harvard as an employer, please check out our career site. We have a lot of things available, and we're posting new roles all the time. So make sure that you are checking career sites often. I do also want to note, since we are in this kind of time of uncertainty, a lot of organizations might be cutting back on recruitment, things like that. This is still an opportunity to do some of that like strategic networking that Ahmed was talking about earlier. And it's a really great opportunity to reach out, build relationships with recruiters, do informational interviews, join talent communities, just to, build those relationships so that when organizations do have roles available, you're top of mind and you're going to be one of the first people to hear about that. And so, Alicia will talk a little bit more about our talent community later, but a lot of organizations do have a system like this where you can indicate that you're interested in being considered for roles. And then they'll reach out to you as things pop up that match your background and your interests. So definitely, if you see an organization that you're really interested in, but there are no roles that are quite the best fit for you at a time, check and see if they have a talent community and think about connecting with them that way as well. But so assuming that we found an organization and a role that we're excited about, the next thing that you're going to want to do before you apply for the job is to read the job description really thoroughly and to make sure that you understand it really well. We know, and I'm sure you guys know, applying for jobs is really time and energy intensive. And so we want to make sure that we're really targeting our efforts and we're only going to apply for jobs that are a really good fit for us. So I definitely recommend reading the job description multiple times to make sure that you understand all aspects of it. You're going to want to, if you see any words or acronyms that you're not familiar with, make sure you Google them and understand what that means. And you want to be selective and only apply for roles that are a really strong match. And part of understanding what may or may not be a match is checking out the requirements for the role. So at Harvard and at a lot of organizations, the requirements for a job might be broken into two separate categories. So at Harvard, we have the minimum requirements for the job, or what we call basic qualifications. And these are really the minimum qualifications that are required to do this job. And so for Harvard and for other federal contractors, if you don't meet all of the requirements listed under that basic qualifications minimum requirements section, unfortunately, we're not able to consider you for the role. So it's really important to make sure that you understand those minimum requirements and that you're meeting all of those before you apply for a role. But then you'll also often see additional qualifications or desirable skills, things like that. And so these are like things that are nice to have. They're more flexible. So if you meet all of the basic qualifications for the role, but you don't meet all of the additional qualifications or desired skills, that's totally okay. There is no perfect candidate. No one's going to meet all of those criteria. Usually, if you meet about like 80% of those additional qualifications, you're a really strong fit for the role, and I would really strongly encourage you to apply. Another source that's going to be really important is LinkedIn in your job search. So can I have just like a quick show of hands, or you can throw it in the chat? Does anyone here already use LinkedIn or have a LinkedIn profile? Okay. All right, cool. So, okay, I see a couple in the chat that we've got LinkedIn. All right, that's awesome. So for folks who are already using it, hopefully some tips and tricks. If folks aren't using LinkedIn, I do really recommend that you set up a profile and use this as a resource. A lot of organizations rely really heavily on LinkedIn for recruitment. So this will help to connect you with organizations that might be a good fit for you and help you learn about interesting roles. So some tips to kind of get you started. You're going to want to, first of all, make sure you're using a clear professional headshot for your profile photo. So LinkedIn actually did research into this, which is a little bit wild. And they found that if folks have a professional headshot on their LinkedIn profile, they receive more outreach about jobs and things than folks that don't have any photo on their profile. So I definitely encourage you to add a photo if you're comfortable doing that. You're also going to want to make sure that in your profile, you're detailing your work history and focusing on any specific accomplishments from your previous work experience. You know, if you have colleagues who are also on LinkedIn, you can consider requesting endorsements from them. And that's basically a means where they can say, yeah, I know Mamadou, he's really great at using Excel. And folks can see that on your profile. So I definitely recommend doing that if you have colleagues who are on LinkedIn. You know, and make sure that you are including work experience from outside the US on your profile too. Employers want to use your profile to get a sense of you as a candidate and all of the experience that you have. So it can be a little bit more broad than what you might put on a resume. You're also going to want to set your status to open to work when you are ready to start your job search. And so this is a flag to us as recruiters that you are actively looking for work. And if we have an opportunity, it's okay to reach out to you to let you know about that opportunity. So this will help to make sure that, you know, folks know that you are looking. It can also help folks in your network to know, oh, I have a job that I think would be a great fit. Let me share it with this person. So make sure that you do set your status to open to work when you are ready to start your job search. You're also going to want to build a strong network. And this goes back to Ahmed's point about networking and being strategic about that. You know, you're going to want to add folks to your LinkedIn who you know from previous work experience, who you've met through ABN potentially. You can also think about joining groups that are relevant to your area of professional focus. So I'm a part of some groups for the Boston biotech community on LinkedIn. And it's really nice because folks share, you know, just general info about what's happening in the field, so you can stay up to date about that. But also when there are new opportunities that come up, a lot of times folks will post to their LinkedIn groups and say, hey, my company's hiring. Do you know anyone who's a good fit for this type of role? So it's another way to hear about jobs on the earlier side and get your foot in the door there. You can also create job alerts on LinkedIn. A lot of organizations post their jobs to LinkedIn as one of the primary ways that they advertise them. So it's really nice because you can set up alerts based on keywords, location. Say you only want to look for jobs in the greater Boston area, you can set that as a filter. You can also, you know, if you're open to relocating to other areas, you can also indicate that you are interested in being considered for roles in other geographical areas too. And you can filter by industry as well as whether the job is on site, hybrid, or remote. So you can really tailor this so that you're receiving notifications about jobs that are really relevant to what you're looking for. And you'll get an email notification and notification on LinkedIn when there are new opportunities that match those filters. And then the other thing on LinkedIn that you might want to consider using is LinkedIn Learning. So this is unfortunately a paid, you know, module of LinkedIn. However, a lot of public libraries provide access to this for folks, or if you're currently employed, your employer might provide access to this for you for free. And this is just a really nice way to upskill yourself and, you know, continue professional development. They have a lot of quick courses that can be done at your own pace for things like how to have difficult conversations, how to use different pieces of technology and software. So if you do have access to LinkedIn Learning, I definitely recommend checking that out. But there are also other sites that have similar resources available that don't require a subscription. So something to look into. All right, so we found a job, we're really excited about it, and we want to apply. So we want to make sure that our resume and our cover letter are really in tip-top shape before we submit our application. You know, this is you making your first impression with the employer, so it's really important to make sure that everything is in good order before you submit your application. So I want to talk a little bit about cover letters first, because I think that that's something that maybe doesn't get as much focus as the resume does, but I think it's really, really important for your job search. So you're going to want to.
That's okay.
Okay. So I do recommend always including a cover letter with your submission. And you're going to want to make sure that when you are reading that job description, when you're thinking about applying, you're going to want to make sure you're reading the job description and noting whether a cover letter is required. A lot of organizations do actually require a cover letter, and they'll typically say in the job posting, cover letter is required. If you don't submit a cover letter, we won't consider your application. So make sure you're taking note of any requirements like that. if it's not a requirement for applying for the role, it's still a really great tool to help provide additional information. So, you can use your cover letter as an opportunity to explain unique situations. If you're changing fields and making a career pivot, you can explain, what you're looking for, how your previous experience applies to the new role that you're looking at. You can also, use this to note to employers, if you are looking to relocate, you're not currently based in the area, but you will be relocating there. That's a great way to let them know that, like, yep, I'm really serious about this. I am looking to move to where you are. You can also use this to explain, if you're overqualified. And I don't love the term overqualified because I don't think anyone is ever truly overqualified. We just, have different sets of experience, right? And, you can use your cover letter as a way to explain why you're applying for the role, what specifically interests you about it. And, if you do have more senior experience on your resume, you can explain why you're interested in this role, even if it's not, at quite the same level as what you've worked at previously. As with any application materials, please make sure that you are proofreading and spell checking your cover letter before you submit it. Again, this is your first impression, so we really want to make sure that everything looks good. There are no spelling errors, there are no formatting errors, and everything is just really polished and making a good impression. And then, your resume is equally as important. So, you do want to make sure that you're tailoring your resume for every job. Really one resume does not fit all, right? So I recommend having like a master copy of your resume that you can use as kind of a template. And then for each job, going in and just tweaking it, changing it to make sure you're highlighting the experience and the accomplishments that are most relevant for the specific job that you are applying for. So, we're going to want to make sure that the resume is really clear, concise, and structured. We want to make it easy for recruiters and the hiring manager to find the information that they need to understand why you're a good fit for this role. You're going to want to highlight your skills and experience. And similar to your LinkedIn profile, I do recommend focusing on your accomplishments. And, if you have specific like metrics that you can provide, I had a 20% increase in sales in this role. That's something that you want to put on your resume, again, to make it really easy for the hiring team to understand, oh, this person is really great at their job. I want to hire them. You also want to make sure that you are adjusting your resume to fit US standards. So I know in a lot of the world, it's really common to include your date of birth, marital status, a photo even. In a lot of places, it's really common to include a cover photo on your resume. In the US, these are not as common. And so I do recommend, making sure that your resume does fit US kind of standards for resumes. And, Maddie mentioned ABN does have a resume review services. So definitely encourage you guys to take advantage of that resource because they are phenomenal and will help to make sure that your resume is in really good shape as you're starting your job search. And, again, you're going to want to make sure you're including all of your relevant experience, including experience from outside of the US. Employers really want to understand you as a candidate holistically. So making sure that you are including any relevant experience and then just optimizing for readability. I recommend keeping it relatively concise. 1 to 2 pages is ideal, just to make sure that it's really easy for folks to kind of get through.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Caitlin Mela, and I'm a talent acquisition partner over at Harvard Medical School. I'm essentially a recruiter, so I would usually be, kind of your first point of contact after you do submit an application. And then typically I would also be the person who would be maybe making you an offer, answering benefits questions, things like that. So today I'm going to walk through kind of what would happen through any interview processes and kind of give some tips for that as well. So to kind of continue what Liz said, you've submitted your application and now, you've been selected to move forward to a type of interview. What type of interview formats might you encounter? And these days there's a lot of them just because of different technologies and things like that we have lately. So the first type I want to talk about is a phone screen. Typically it's a brief phone or video call with a recruiter or talent acquisition partner like myself. It's typically just to confirm your qualifications, go over the basics of the position, make sure you meet the minimum requirements, and have experience that's relevant to the position and that you actually understand certain aspects of the position as well. These calls are usually pretty quick in relation and they don't go too in depth usually. The second interview type or format would be a questionnaire or a survey. Some hiring managers might ask that you fill out a questionnaire or survey ahead of time before any conversations happen in writing first, and then they give you a deadline, usually of about 2 to 3 days. The benefit to this is it allows you to really showcase your writing skills, and it gives you a little bit of time to kind of work out your answers for that particular response. These types of questions usually will ask you to pull from your own experiences and, experience to answer this question. Important to note that this is different from maybe if they ask for a formal writing sample or ask you to complete an assessment later on in the process, usually through the interview process. This is a little bit different. This is really more of a pre-screening questionnaire. The third format that you might encounter out there is a pre-recorded video interview. And this is a case where the employer or hiring team might ask you to record yourself answering questions on video and then submit it to review. This is also known as a one-sided interview. It's definitely less common, but it's becoming more and more popular with the rise of technology for sure. A lot of people, I hear a lot of times people aren't a super big fan of this type, but there are some benefits to this as well. Typically, whatever software they're using for this will give you a few tries before you actually have to submit it. So it kind of allows you to take a bit more time to answer your questions, really think about your responses before submitting that. The fourth type would be a virtual interview. This is a lot more common these days. And typically you're interviewing with the manager remotely using some form of video conference, usually Teams or Zoom. And this is most common for first or second interviews. This could be a one-on-one with the manager, or it could be what they call a panel, which is with multiple people interviewing you at once. So similar to the pre-recorded interview, there's some benefits to this as well. You're kind of in the comfort usually of your own home. You're a little bit more comfortable. You can be a little bit more relaxed with it. But there are still some tips that I recommend if you do have a virtual interview or a pre-recorded interview. Try to have a background that's more like professional looking in the background. There's a lot of great Zoom backgrounds that you can find online that you can put on there, or just go for a blank wall or bookcase behind you. Try not to go for a Zoom option that's a little distracting. Don't have like an exploding volcano behind you or anything like that. That might distract a little bit from what you're saying and be a little distracting for the interviewer. And you can always try your hardest to kind of make eye contact even in a virtual setting. My trick for that is to kind of just make sure that you have whoever the interviewer is, have that screen very, very close to your camera. That way you're looking still at them, but it still looks like you're actually giving eye contact with them. And again, virtual interviews, similar to in-person interviews, like I said, could be multiple people at once. So you just be prepared that it could be a little bit longer as well. Moving on to in-person interviews, this is your traditional interview that most of you are probably most familiar with, typically on site. Same as a virtual, it could be with one person or multiple people. The benefit to this type is that it allows you to really see the space that you're going to be working in. You might be able to meet more colleagues and kind of see them in their natural habitat, so to speak. So there's the benefit to that as well. Moving on to second interviews. So most positions here, or a lot of positions, you'll have multiple interviews. So your second or subsequent interviews are your follow-up interviews. They're usually with different folks than you met with at first, but sometimes you'll have the same person, but usually multiple people. Could be a department leader or other team members. They may ask different questions, but they may ask similar questions as well. So my best advice for this is to really be consistent and just making sure that you're being truthful and not exaggerating anything, because it's much easier to kind of keep track of, your responses through multiple interviews if you are remaining consistent. And the best way to do that is to tell the truth 100%. And then finally, your final interview, and that's your last interview before the final decision has made. So sometimes that's informal and sometimes it's longer in the day to meet additional stakeholders. It really does depend on the type of position. So that's pretty much that. Moving on to our interview tips. So best way to be prepared is with the 4 R's. The first one stands for research. Do as much research as possible about the company, the role, the industry, and really try to tailor your responses and questions to that research that you've done. A lot of departments at Harvard Medical School, for example, do have their own websites. So we really encourage you to take a look at that website and get familiar with the mission, values, goals, projects, and then reread the job description that you applied for as well to make sure that you have a full understanding of what you're walking into, essentially. The second R stands for reflect, and this means to reflect yourself. So really consider your own experiences and skills and how they align with the job requirements. Be ready to talk about your past experiences and have examples ready. The point of an interview really is to gauge if you have the skill set and knowledge that's really needed to handle the challenges that might arise on the day-to-day. So already reflecting on these skills and experiences in your own past will really help you recall them when you need them during the interview. So really take some time with yourself and really reflect on your past experience. The third R is rehearse. This is fun. Practice answering some common questions and articulating your thoughts clearly. Sometimes you can do that, with a friend, run some interview questions, research that a little bit, or sometimes just in front of a mirror. You'd be surprised the weird faces you might make when you're answering a question. So it's always good to kind of know yourself and rehearse that. And the fourth R is really just relax. And I know that that's so much easier said than done, but try your best to just manage your stress and ensure that you approach this interview calmly and confidently. At the end of the day, these are just conversations. The interviewer is just a person and they're interviewing you and they're just having a conversation with you and you're having a conversation with them. Moving on, also try to be enthusiastic and confident during the interview. And how you can really exude this is to have good posture, eye contact, speak clearly when you can. One of my favorite things to say is, show confidence, but not arrogance. And the best way to do this is what you say, show, don't tell. It's really easy to say, I'm the best person for the job. I'm the best candidate. You're telling somebody that, but you're not actually showing them that. Confidence comes from knowing your skills and experiences and how they relate to the role. And you can show that by pulling on your past experiences and actually explaining how that applies. Express your interest, actively listen, ask thoughtful questions, show that you care about the position, and just make sure that, you asking these thoughtful questions will definitely let the interviewer know that you are interested. As a recruiter, one of the number one things I hear from my managers is, I want to hire somebody who wants to be here. And that's really important. So just make sure you're really saying that you really want to be there. And then be your most authentic and honest self. And I kind of already said this already, but just make sure that you're not, exaggerating anything, make sure that you are being 100% truthful. And honestly, being your most authentic self really means, just being you. We get questions a lot from folks who might be concerned about something like, well, I have an accent and I'm afraid that that's going to hinder me in the process. Your accent is not going to stop you from getting a job. So don't try to change your accent or mask it in any way, especially if you're interviewing at a place like Harvard. It's right there in our mission. We are so incredibly proud of the diverse and inclusive workforce that we have, gathered over the years. We have people working here from all parts of the world. So best advice is to be comfortable with who you are and focus on the value that you're able to bring to the position, and that confidence will naturally come to you. Moving on to the types of interview questions. So these are some types of questions that you might encounter during those interview phases. First one, personality-based. These are really more questions about you. So examples would be, what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? Pretty common. And what type of work environment do you prefer? Or even just the dreaded, tell me about yourself. Next one is the technical type of question, which is used to typically assess your technical or industry knowledge. So some examples of that might be like, what software programs are you proficient in? If you're interviewing for like a certain job, it might be, explain the difference between like, these two things in the job, or walk me through, this specific process that's very common in the industry. So just kind of, if you are working, in a more of a technical field, just make sure that you have that kind of ready to go and you're aware of that knowledge. Competency-based questions, which is the next one, is kind of similar, but it really evaluates your relevant skills. So examples of that would be, how long have you been in this field? Describe your responsibilities of your prior job, and then what strategies do you use to keep yourself organized, among others. Next one, motivational career goals. These are more like future state. So your interviewer is really trying to gauge kind of where you're thinking about yourself in the future. Do you see yourself still at this company? Are you using this as a stepping stone? That kind of thing. So some examples of that might be, where do you see yourself in 5 years? What is your biggest motivator at work? Why are you interested in this job specifically? And they're really using that to try to just kind of gauge what you're thinking for your future state. And then the last two types are probably the ones that interviewers rely on the most to really figure out if you are going to be a great fit for the position. The first one is situational, and these are more hypothetical situations. So essentially, like, what would you do if? The interviewer might give you an example of something that happens at their job often, and then kind of ask you how you handle it. So some examples of that might be, what would you do if you disagreed with your manager? If you were assigned multiple projects at once, how would you keep yourself organized? Or a customer is demanding a refund on a sale, but the return window has passed. How would you handle the situation? So those are some examples of situationals. They're not things you've done, but they're just asking you to explain what you would do. And then the next one and last one is behavioral. And this is really similar to situational, but you're pulling on your own experiences. So your interviewer wants to know not what you would do, but what you have done in these situations. So tell me about a time you achieved a difficult goal. Have you ever had a disagreement at work? What happened? And tell me about a time you strove to meet a strict deadline. So I really want to focus on the behavioral questions a little bit, because again, these are ones that interviewers really do rely on. And there's actually a trick to really answering these questions really well. And it's called the STAR method. So it's an acronym, and essentially it is a roadmap for how to answer these questions. So the first part of it is the S, and that's situation, or set the scene, as I like to say. Really briefly explain the context or the background in your answer. So really just kind of explain it. It doesn't have to be super long. You just want to make sure that the interviewer understands kind of the background of your little story that you're telling to answer this question. The next piece is T for task. So explain the task or the challenge that arose. Basically, what problem were you really presented with? Like, what problem did you have to solve here? The A stands for action. Tell us how you solved this problem. What steps did you take to get to that end resolve? This goes back to the show, not tell. This is where you're showing. This is how you really show what steps you would take to really solve that problem. And then R stands for the result. What happened? Share your outcome or the results and the impact of that original issue. So we're going to walk through some examples a little bit. So the next slide. So we'll keep the STAR method over to the left a little bit. So this is a good example of a behavioral question. Tell me about a time that you had a difficult customer. So I'm going to give you an example of things that we hear pretty often, and then I'll give you kind of a better example. So in response to that might be, I deal with difficult customers all the time. We get at least a few every day. Everyone always comes to me to work with the rude customers. Now, I don't know if you want to put this in the chat, but like, what do we think might be wrong with this particular statement? It's not inherently bad, right? I mean, it shows that you're dealing with difficult customers a lot, but why isn't it the best response?
It's so specific.
Right. You're showing, you're not, or you're telling, you're not showing, right? We're not actually walking through anything. So a better example would be utilizing the STAR method. And we can show that in the next click. Can someone click? Thank you. So this might be a better example. And I kind of color coded it a little bit so we can kind of see which parts are which. So the STAR, or the situation, I work as a bank teller and often deal with irate customers, but one instance stands out. The task. A woman was trying to withdraw more than was in her account, and she was adamant that her balance was incorrect and that we had stolen her money. What steps did you take? Let's talk about the action. I calmly offered to go over her account with her in a private office so I could get her away from the floor and the other customers. Together, we went through her withdrawals line by line to show her that the statement was correct. I then offered to set her up online billing so she could track her account at home. Those are the steps that you took. So what was the result? She apologized to me in the end and left feeling better about the situation. So do we see the difference here? Where one of them, you're actually answering the question, right? So tell me about a time you had a difficult customer. By saying that you deal with customers all the time, you're not actually answering the question, but by utilizing the STAR method, you're actually walking through, you know, those steps that you took and you are answering the interviewer's question. We have one more example, and then I'm going to have you guys kind of reflect on one too. And you can share if you want, but you don't have to. So the next one we'll go over is tell me about a time that you received negative feedback and how you responded. So here's a common example. I don't think I've ever received negative feedback at work. My reviews are always glowing, but if my manager does bring something up, I always work to fix it. Again, it's not a horrible response. You know, you're saying that you never receive negative feedback, meaning that you're a good employee, but it doesn't answer the question. The question is, tell me about a time you received negative feedback. So a better response would be utilizing the STAR method. I once worked as an account manager for a food distributor. Our company sold and delivered food products to restaurants, and I was their first point of contact for any issues. That's a situation. We're setting the scene. The task. One of my clients told my manager that they didn't feel like I was updating them fast enough if their delivery was running late. So this is the problem that comes up, right? This is the problem we have to solve. So what action did you take? I met with my manager first to brainstorm creative solutions, and then I met with the client in person the next day. I listened to his concerns and then explained our process and the solutions that we had produced. So we're showing our skills. What was the result? We came to an understanding and a compromise, and my relationship with that client was much better going forward. Here we've answered the interviewer's question and we've showcased our skills for, you know, going to your manager first, dealing with a difficult customer. You've shown all of those skills in just this one simple answer. So now we're going to work on one together, kind of, just have you reflect on it a little bit. And again, you're welcome to share it verbally if you want, or throw it in the chat. We might not have time to get to all of them, but so here is our example. Tell me about a time you made a mistake and how you went about correcting it. And this one is super common, so definitely make sure you have it in your arsenal. So we'll give you guys maybe about 2 to 3 minutes to reflect on this. And, you know, in the meantime, again, feel free to throw it in the chat. Okay, a few more moments, guys. Would anybody like to share? Anyone? Okay, that's okay. If you do decide that you kind of want some feedback about it, feel free to throw it in the chat. Oh, there's one. Okay, I'm going to read it. Thank you, whoever this was. When I was doing my master's degree research experiment, I didn't get the expected results. When I repeated it, I was always getting false negative outcomes. Okay, great. So that's kind of setting the scene. When I discussed this issue with my professor, he recommended that I should use other kits from another company. And when I used the new kits in my experiment, I had wonderful results. Okay, great. No, this is really good. So you set the scene, you talked about the task or the problem that came up, what actions you took, talking to your professor, and recommended the other kits, and then the result. So that's awesome. Great job. All right, perfect. And again, if you want to keep throwing them in the chat, go ahead. And we can maybe give some feedback, kind of after the call. All right, moving on. And now some fun things, what to avoid during interviews, right? So we've already talked about what goes right, but what should we generally avoid? Arriving late, try not to do that. If you are arriving late, because we know things happen like, traffic or something like that, try your best to contact the interviewer while you're en route, just to let them know, hey, I might be a few minutes late because of this, but try your hardest not to be late for the interview. Dressing inappropriately, and I really want to take a second to pause about this because inappropriateness when it comes to dress is very subjective, right? What I mean by dressing inappropriately is dressing inappropriately for the job that you're interviewing for, right? So it goes back to that research step of preparation. The best thing to do is to research the company or department culture ahead of time, and kind of make sure that you're kind of fitting that. So dress for the job you want. The best example I can actually think of for dressing inappropriately, I don't know if you guys have ever seen the movie Step Brothers. If you don't, I recommend it. It's really funny. But there's a scene in that movie where, Will Ferrell's character and his stepbrother, they go on an interview for, I think it's like a custodial job, and they wear tuxedos. And this is a really good example of what not to wear, and to how to dress, dressing inappropriately for the job that you want. And it's kind of so ridiculous in the scene that the interviewer actually calls them out on it. And they say, you're wearing tuxedos to a custodial job. Like, why are you doing this? So that's like a really good example of kind of how to dress inappropriately for a job interview. When in doubt, business casual is usually a pretty safe bet. So research that. And you don't have to break the bank with these outfits either. As long as your outfit is clean, and generally, fits decently well, it's usually not a concern. So business casual is usually a great way to go. And kind of similar to the Step Brothers story, bringing family or friends with you. The interviewer is interviewing you, not your friends or family. So please report to these interviews, by yourself and have your friends stay outside or in the car or anything like that. You also want to avoid speaking negatively about a former employer. And I know what you might say, Caitlin, you told me to be 100% honest and my last employer was a nightmare. What do I do? The best way to really go about this, if your last employer really did not jive well with you, there are ways to kind of say things without saying them. So a good way to do that, we might say something like, my former employer, we went our separate ways because our values didn't align. You're not lying, you know what I mean? But you're not speaking negatively about your former employer either. You're just kind of leaving it at that. And that's a really good way to do that. You also want to avoid talking about how much you need this job. That's generally not related to your, the interview that you're having right now. So even if that's true, maybe just best to leave that out. What to avoid, not researching ahead of time. We've already beaten this to death, so I'm not going to go into that anymore. Don't use your phone during the interview. And this is a problem that's kind of come up more obviously in recent years, but kind of just keep your phone off and away, tucked into your purse or your pocket. Just don't have it out during the interview. You also want to avoid, poor communication. And what I mean by this might be something like talking too fast or talking too slow. What you really want to do is keep your responses clear and concise. And poor communication meaning make sure you're answering the interviewer's questions. So just make sure that, you're listening to their question fully. If you don't know an answer right off the bat, it's okay to take a pause and consider before answering. That way you're not just kind of spewing anything out that maybe you didn't really have a chance to consider. So it's okay to say something like, you know what, that's a great question. Let me think about it for a second, if that's okay. Take a moment, collect your thoughts, and then present, your answer in a clear and concise way. And what to avoid, I think I've said this already, but lying or exaggerating on your experience. Even a slight exaggeration might come out, if multiple interviewers are asking you similar questions. It's really hard to really maintain that. So try not to do that. And then lastly, after the interview, so you've aced all the interviews. After every interview, I do recommend sending a thank you email. Similar to what Liz said about cover letters, these have kind of dropped off a bit in recent years. So if you do send a thank you email, especially either right after the interview or at the very latest the next morning, you will stand out. Depending on what email you have, if you don't have everyone's email, just ask the person that you're emailing to please forward, your thanks to everyone else, but just express your gratitude. And then the next piece would be reference checks. So typically someone in HR would reach out to you to ask you to give a reference check. Here at Harvard, we actually do request 5 references. So be sure to have at least 5 handy, usually a mix of managers and coworkers. This could be a phone reference where we just pick up the phone and call your references, or an electronic process where we would ask you to input your references and their email addresses. So our best advice for references is to really nurture those relationships with your former employers or mentors or coworkers. Really just kind of keep in touch. And please, please, please let them know that you're using them as a reference, especially when you're going to be getting a reference call sent. We don't want to be picking up the phone and calling them in the middle of their kid's soccer game, and then they're annoyed because they had no idea that a reference call was coming. And then they might not give you the best reference because it's not the right time. So if you give them a heads up, it's a great way for them to really think about their answers and know that they'll be getting that call soon. So please keep in touch with them and let them know. Okay, great. So the reference checks came back, all good to go. We're at the offer stage now. So an offer will always come from HR, or usually, at least at Harvard, it definitely will come from HR. A hiring manager may tell you that they intend to give you an offer, but that is not an official offer. An official offer needs to come from HR and would usually be sent to you in writing after the call. So just kind of keep that in mind. The offer is usually contingent on things like a background screening and a final reference check, so keep that in mind as well. During the offer stage, this is a great time to ask any questions regarding earned time off, benefits, anything really HR related that maybe you didn't ask up front. You want to make sure that you understand the ins and outs of your offer completely and the total compensation, which would include benefits and earned time off. So that's a great time to ask that. And we in HR, we're ready to answer those questions. So we have all those resources available to you. So we'll be happy to send that over as well. Now, you don't usually have to respond to an offer right on the spot. It's okay to say, hey, can I take a day or two to think about it? Usually, up to 48 hours is usually pretty typical for that. Make sure that it works for your family, make sure that the compensation works. Because, the thing that we don't want is to have you accept an offer and then leave shortly after because it really didn't work. So just make sure that you're taking the time to really consider if the offer works for you. And then, bring it back to HR if you have any questions or counterpoints or anything like that. If you do accept the contingent offer, we would then move into a background check screening process, maybe do a final reference with your current, employer, and then we'd give you that final offer, which is where we would start, schedule your start date. I won't go into these 2 things that in depth, because this is something that would happen, your recruiter can walk you through this once you do get to that point. And next, I'm going to pass it on over to Sabrina, and she will tell you a bit about her immigration journey and her career path here in the U.S.
Right. Hi, everybody. I'm Sabrina. I am working with our HR team at HMS, and today I'm really here to tell more about my story and how I ended up being here at HMS HR. So I originally came here to the US as an au pair, where I was in a family here in Medford for 2 years. My second year, I was also attending some college classes at Bunker Hill Community College, but also at the Harvard Extension School. With that, after the 2 years, I left, returned home, started college, and did an associate's degree in aviation management, which then my parents, which my mom is originally from the US, decided that they're going to retire in the US. So I was at crossroads whether I stay in Germany or whether I come with them to the US, where I decided, I will continue my studies in the US. So I went to Salem State here in Massachusetts. And with there, I started working also with their international office. Did a lot of work in the immigration field with the international office. And after that, I started a journey with a company in HR, which was a moving company. So I did work in the HR field. And then I applied for the job at the medical school, which was a combination out of immigration and HR work. I worked there in a Department of Genetics, which is one of the biggest basic science departments at the medical school. And from there, I moved 7 years later into the role that I am currently in. Immigration, has its challenges. When I arrived as an au pair, even though I took English in high school, I was never very good at it. So I had to learn the language, which was, sometimes bumpy at times, but with patience and a good family that really helped get me there, I overcame the hurdle of English as a second language, more or less. And then also career-wise, right? Taking good advice from people that were good mentors to me, like Ahmed said before, it can get you there. And I think HMS has a lot of immigrants that have gone through different, career tracks at this school, at the university. Just in the departments, we have a variety of department administrators that all come from different countries, Portugal, Colombia, Albania. So it's a very diverse field. And we really encourage you to take, action in applying for jobs, and don't give up even if it is not working the first time. I'm here also to answer any questions if you have later in the Q&A session about my journey in more particular ways. And I also can answer any questions that are work authorization related and visa sponsorship at Harvard, if anybody's interested.
Thank you, Sabrina. And yes, feel free to insert those questions you may have regarding work authorization or visa sponsorships into the chat, or raise your hand. Sabrina would be glad to speak to these questions after our presentation here.
Also just showing that, again, a journey doesn't have to always be in the same kind of field. I always thought that I was going to be in aviation management, but then when I started working with the international office at Salem State, I really became interested in immigration, but also then developed an interest for HR. So that job at HMS in the department sort of was a combination of that. And this role that I'm currently now is still, somewhat of a combined role where both HR and immigration are a topic that I'm overseeing. But again, that was not originally planned like that, but the journey took me here, which I'm grateful for.
Thank you, Sabrina. And please put your questions that you may have in the chat regarding work authorization or any more questions about Sabrina's interesting journey. So here, if you would like to pull up your phone and scan this QR code, or again, remember you'll be receiving these slides after and can complete this task after the presentation. We are delighted to extend an invitation to you to join our talent community. Here, you'll be able to stay connected with us, receive periodic updates on what's happening in our communities. We may invite you to exclusive events, share tips around the recruitment process, industry insights, and most importantly, this is your chance to network directly with our recruiters here at Harvard Medical School and the Wyss Institute at Harvard, and to be among the first to know when other openings may align with your areas of interest and expertise. It's a short form that you'll complete, and you'll input your areas of interest. So you can say, I'm interested in research administration, and we may notify you. Our recruiters will have access to your contact information. We may notify you when openings arise in that area or share relative information with you. Again, we will share the link to browse our jobs, and reminder to continue to check those sites as jobs are always being posted daily. Fostering these connections within our communities between Harvard, the medical school, the Wyss, and African Bridge Network is an essential part of our mission, and we would really be honored to have you be a part of it and to become connected with us. Also, there's a link at the bottom where you'll see this form, And again, this will be shared with you after, and I've got this link at the end of the slide too. If you do apply for a role at Harvard Medical School, the Wyss Institute at Harvard, or any other Harvard school, please feel free to complete this short form. It will ask you what job you did apply for. And we can connect you with a member of our talent acquisition recruiting team to perhaps give you feedback on your application. If it's one of the medical school's jobs or the Wyss Institute jobs, maybe the recruiter can connect with you for to learn a little bit more about the role, to share more about the role. And we have connections across the university with the other recruiters. So maybe we're able to do a little work on the back end there and make some of those connections. So please do fill that out and consider us as your Harvard resource. We'll be sharing our email with you as well. So here again are all of those links. You have the talent community that we invite all of you today to please join. It's a short form where you'll fill in your contact information, your areas of interest, and you'll have the opportunity to put your LinkedIn profile. If you have that, we can become connected on LinkedIn. We also do have the Harvard Medical School and the Wyss Institute LinkedIns here where we do post all of our jobs as well. We have a shared email account where we monitor this regularly. And again, consider us your resource at Harvard. And then we have a few shared resources down at the bottom, the ABN resume revision, which you can learn more about through Maddie, and some resources available with the Immigrant Learning Center. We are so impressed with the skilled group of people here, and we do believe in you all. We hope you consider Harvard Medical School and the Wyss Institute or any Harvard school as a future employer. But again, we're so grateful for our partnership with the African Bridge Network and for your time today, this morning. So we would like to open up questions. You can feel free to put those in the chat about any of the content today or any other questions that are relative, or you can unmute yourself if you're comfortable and come off mute and ask us your questions. We'd be happy to discuss. We do have some more time here this morning. Thank you.
Yeah, like Alicia said, if you guys want to either put your questions in the chat or unmute and ask them, feel free.
Yes, hi. I think I have some question in the chat. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, did you put a question in the chat or?
Yes, I did.
Okay, I'm just trying to find it. 1 second. I'm not seeing it.
Okay, I can ask it. I can ask right now. My question was, what are the requirements for sponsorship by Harvard? And given the current political situation, has there been any changes to these requirements?
So typically Harvard does not sponsor visas for staff position. There are really for academic positions like postdocs and temporary researchers. The reason for that is because we typically sponsor exchange visitors and not necessarily work visas as part of being a higher education institution. However, we do hire a lot of people in staff positions that have outside work authorization. You know, we try to help as good as we can to navigate to this current climate. climate, which we understand is not easy for anybody, and we're trying to stay on top of getting the most updated guidance from our Office of General Counsel, as well as our international office, to support our international community as best as we can. But again, currently, as everybody probably is aware, it's a little bit hard to navigate because sometimes there's one message that is being announced and then the day after it changes. But again, we're trying to stay on top so that we can be most supportive of anybody that we have that is currently on a visa or on some type of work authorization.
All right, thank you.
I see a question in the chat here from Mohammed. He wants to know, I want to know what does, let me just read this here. Do we need any degree in the US to work as a researcher?
So I think it depends on the position. If there is a degree required, typically, like for example, for our postdocs on the academic side, we would accept a degree from overseas. Sometimes we just need to get them evaluated, meaning that we need to ensure that they're the same standard of or level of a US degree would be. There are companies that do degree evaluations. So as long as the degree is evaluated and comes back at the same level, then that would be, I think, fine.
Hi, can I ask a question, please? So I would like to know if there are any available resources to know if there are any training opportunities, because I know some people come from abroad and they get scholarships or training opportunities. But I try to, I live in the US, but I don't have access to these kind of opportunities. I would like to know if there are any available resources.
Maybe you could specify what training opportunities you are looking for. Would that be like a postdoc training or?
So postdoc trainings, I know that it's lab specific, right? So I'm not looking for something that is lab specific. I'm looking in general. Is there any HMS available resources in general? Or is it like I would have to go specifically target my research?
I can help answer that question. You know, there are a number of training opportunities for staff that are available, but you would have to be an already existing staff member. Harvard University, through the Center for Workforce Development, offers a number of different types of trainings for different populations of the workforce. You know, but outside of Harvard, I'm not sure I can recall any specific ones off the top of my head, but I know that there are organizations out there that offer key trainings based on specific focus areas.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
I see a question in the chat about internship opportunities. We recruit for staff positions primarily. However, I can recommend if you're looking on the websites at the various departments across the medical school, the Wyss Institute, or Harvard, if you're reaching out to the departments directly, they may need interns. So that could be a way to get your foot in the door there and find if they're looking for interns.
Most departments would probably have interns positions posted on their own department website.
Thank you, Sabrina.
I also see a question regarding somebody seeing a job opportunity outside of Massachusetts on the website. Harvard University is registered in a number of states, not all. I believe there are, how many, is it 9, if I'm not mistaken, 10? I forget the number, but we are registered in the key number of states. Now, those opportunities are dependent upon the department and the work that they are doing. For instance, sometimes we have with the grant managers, for instance, we're able to recruit grant managers some other states, depending on the nature of the work. So if the work is able to be performed remotely and the department has made that determination, then we are allowed to recruit people from those states. Now, keep in mind also that, when we see applicants apply to the university, we get applicants from all over the country, all over the world. And we're not necessarily, we don't screen people based on their address, because we're assuming that, folks have read the job description. They know that if it's a remote work, they also know that if we do have the states that we're able to hire from listed in every job description. So if you're in one of those states and the job is advertising remotely, certainly we would work with you. But if you are not in any one of those states, we would be under the assumption that you'll be willing to relocate to either Massachusetts if the work requires you to be present, or hybrid, maybe more frequently, or you're willing to relocate to any one of the states that we are registered to work with you from. I hope that answers your question.
And to add to this, on most career sites, you can search on-site, hybrid, or remote. So if you're living fully in another state that you may not be able to travel regularly to where the job is performed, you could select maybe remote and filter jobs that way on career sites.
For that next question, yes, we do. And that really depends on, again, the field of study, but typically visiting students would be coming through the department directly. And then we would have to do a number of checks also for foreign visiting internships. Like, one, are you currently here on a visa as a student in a different institution in the US? And would your current student visa allow for this internship to happen? Or if you're coming from overseas, Harvard does allow for certain visas to be sponsored. Typically, that's a J1 student intern visa, which would allow you to come here for up to 12 months per degree period, if this internship is a requirement of your studies in your home institution. Does that help?
Does anyone else have any further questions?
Hi everyone, I do have one question. Are there like any kind of like mentorship for who started on the positions,
You mean if you're hired into a position, like what would be the
like a mentorship or like a training to develop your career in the company?
I can answer this. So we do actually have something called the HIP program, which is the Harvard Internal Professional Pathways program. And what this essentially is once you're hired, an employee can sign up for that program to be paired with a mentor in their field. I'm not sure exactly the requirements for that, but we do have a whole page dedicated to that, and it's typically gone over during orientation as well. So there are certainly opportunities for mentorship here.
And I do also encourage you, I know Maddie will probably be able to speak more to this. ABN, I think offers a number of support programs. So if there's anything that you are probably looking for or want ABN to help explore, that's going to help assist, the population, I think it's a great conversation to have. And ABN can help you seek out, even perhaps if they don't offer it, maybe other resources that might be available to you as well.
But also
Awesome.
within departments and same roles, I think typically at HMS at least, we have great communities where, for example, if you're a department administrator, there is groups of department administrators that meet on a regular basis. So if somebody joins the group and is new, they're there to help mentor throughout or answer questions that you might have, just to get acquainted in your role, but also have a support structure.
That's great. Thank you.
Are there any concerns that people have that they're experiencing currently that perhaps we can help offer some advice or recommendations on?
So I do see a question in the chat about the current hiring pause and timeline for returning to normal. Ahmed, do you want to maybe take that?
Sure, of course. It's the hiring pause is definitely a difficult time for Harvard and other institutions across the country, given the current climate. There is no, we don't really have an answer to when it will end. But if you're following the news, of course, Harvard particularly is in the news today. And as a Harvard staff member, I can tell you, I'm definitely proud of the response of our school. They made it very clear that they were not going to agree to the proposed changes from the federal government, and they really are thinking about the community as a whole. So at such a difficult time to see Harvard take a lead on pushing back on these issues, I think it really makes us proud as staff members to be part of an organization like this. So we're confident that, our leadership are definitely working hard to try to get things back to normal as quickly as possible. You're welcome, Yvonne. And I apologize. I know that we also, believe me, as recruiters, we are eager to get back to recruiting because it's our bread and butter, and we love engaging with helping to bring people talent to our organization. But this pause has definitely also created a challenge for us. But as it was mentioned earlier on in the beginning of this, it's also a great opportunity for us to continue to do this great work of connecting with people and building the talent pipelines and having conversations, because recruiting is going to continue to happen. Talents are going to constantly be attracted. So during a time when a lot of hiring is not happening, is also a great time to establish strong relationships, because as recruiters, we have sometimes 20, 30 to 40 recs. And by recs, I mean open positions that we have to fill. And each of these recs sometimes contain up to thousands of applicants. So being able to build relationships with your recruiters when they are not actively recruiting is a great opportunity to make sure that you are top of mind when the right opportunity becomes available. So this is great. We hope that you guys, this was helpful. We hope that you enjoyed the presentation, and we hope that you would continue to stay in touch with us and continue to use ABN as a resource.
Yes, thank you all so much. I am going to put my email in the chat here in case anyone wants to reach out to me with questions on ABN. So yeah, and you'll also be receiving a follow-up email with all of the slides from today, as well as an evaluation form. It'll be a few short questions just so we can get your feedback on what was helpful from today. Additionally, like I said, this meeting is being recorded. So if anyone wants to go back and watch this, I'll send out a link for the recording as well. But thank you all so much for being here today. And thank you to everyone at Harvard for coming in and presenting. We really appreciate it. And okay, my email is in the chat now, in case anyone wants to take note of that. All right, any final comments from the Harvard team? Anyone want to say anything before we end for today?
Thank you, Maddie. And again, to all, we appreciate your time today. Maddie will be sharing the slides here that contain the information to join our talent community. And that is the best way to become connected with us. She'll also share the link to let us know if you apply for jobs. We recommend you doing that. But again, please join our talent community. Maddie will send you some information how to do that. And that's the start of becoming connected with Harvard Medical School, the Wyss Institute, and our recruiters.
All right, thank you all so much for being here today. We appreciate it. Have a great rest of your day. All right, goodbye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.